Lost and found. I wonder if you've ever lost something precious only to find it again after much searching. I've told the story many times before, but it's the best example that I can think of. I remember when I was looking after my 2-year-old daughter Bethany at home while Sue was at work, and I'd just done the ironing and sat down for a cup of coffee when I realised that I hadn't heard Bethany playing for some time. So I went round the house calling her name. No sign of her. Oh well, she must be somewhere. So I went round again, calling her name a bit more urgently. Still no response. At this point I began to get worried. Could she have somehow managed to open the front door? I looked out the front, but there was no sign of her. Maybe she'd somehow got out into the back garden. But again, no sign. At this point I began to panic. I ran round the whole house shouting Bethany's name and looking everywhere, but still no response. By the 5th time round the house, I was desperate. My heart was pounding. I was thinking, Susan will never forgive me if I've managed to lose our precious daughter. I seriously was just about to run down the drive and stop the traffic to see if anyone had seen a small child, when Bethany looked out from where she'd been hiding behind her buggy and said, "Boo." And I tell you, I've never been so relieved in my life. My first reaction was to hug her close and thank God. And my second response was to think, don't you ever do that to me again. And I did remind her at her wedding that there is a reason for these grey hairs, you know. Well, maybe you've lost something a bit less precious, but still very important, like a passport or a driving licence. If you're like me, you turn the whole house upside down looking for it. Someone must have moved all my stuff, you say loudly in an accusing manner. If you had put it away properly, you'd be able to find it now, replies your wife, ever so helpfully. And then in the end, you find it exactly where you left it. What a relief. What a cause for celebrating and thanking God. Or is that just me? In this chapter this morning, Luke 15, Jesus tells 3 parables about things that were lost and found in order to illustrate God's heart for lost sinners. We see the context for these stories in the first 2 verses. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering round to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Jesus was being criticised for associating with sinners, the kind of characters you don't often see in church. The respectable people didn't like it. The Pharisees even had a saying, apparently, "Let not a man associate with the wicked, not even to bring him to the law." No wonder they muttered. Jesus received sinners and ate with them, which implied welcome and recognition. The Pharisees were unwilling to seek out sinners. They had no heart for the lost. But Jesus' attitude was completely different. As the great bishop, 19th century bishop J.C. Ryle once said, the thing which they found fault with was the very thing he came on earth to do, and a thing of which he was not ashamed. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, said Paul in 1 Timothy 1:15. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost, said Jesus in Luke 19, verse 10. This was the very reason he came and why he went to the cross, to save sinners. The greatest sadness is that the Pharisees and teachers of the law did not recognise their own sin and their own need to be saved, instead of looking down on others. You know, once or twice in my Christian life, I've known people who swear like a trooper and are often drunk, and yet suddenly they've said something which shows that they're astonishingly open to the gospel. Is God interested in such people? You bet he is. A few years ago, I was asked to do a funeral for one of my neighbour's mothers. My neighbour wasn't somebody you would expect to find in church by a long stretch. But he said to me, I want you to say that the only way to God is through Jesus Christ, the Saviour. And a few years later, when he was dying, he was reading his mother's Bible, and he said to me, I want you to say the same thing again. The only way to God is through Jesus Christ, the Saviour. Is God interested in people like that? Of course he is. Oops, sorry. The truth is that we're all sinners, all in need of God's grace to be saved. But the Pharisees didn't understand that. So Jesus told these 3 parables to show them God's heart for the lost. The parable of the lost sheep, the parable of the lost coin, and then finally and most famously, the parable of the prodigal son. In the first 2 parables, we see God's heart for the lost as he takes the initiative in searching for them, and as he rejoices over their salvation. And in the last parable, we see a merciful father and 2 kinds of sinners. So let's look more closely at God's heart for the lost in these first 2 parables. Firstly, the shepherd and the sheep. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? Where is your compassion? Jesus was saying to them. Remember that generally sheep are some of the most defenceless, easily confused and pitiful of all animals. If they're separated from the flock, they cannot fight, they cannot flee, and they cannot find their way home. If they're knocked down, they often cannot even right themselves. They're prey to any creature that they might meet. And this is a picture of fallen humanity. All we, like sheep, have gone astray, says Isaiah 53 verse 6. We cannot do anything to save ourselves. We need the Good Shepherd to come and have compassion on us. And that's exactly what he does. He heads out into the wilderness, braves hardship and danger, and searches persistently until he finds us, and joyfully carries us home on his shoulders. And then he calls his friends to celebrate. Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. The rescue of even one sinful person sets heaven rejoicing. The joy of heaven is compared to a great party, and all over one sinner. This is what God has done for us. This is how much he values us and wants us to value others. What should be our attitude to the lost? Surely we should go after them and seek to bring them to salvation. I know this stuff isn't easy. We don't necessarily find it easy to talk to others about our faith or to encourage them along to church or whatever. But surely we should have that attitude, the same attitude that God had for us. The parable of the lost coin has a similar message. A woman has 10 coins and loses one. The coin is a drachma, a silver coin worth about one day's wages, and a Palestinian house would have been very dark, with probably only one small window. So the woman lights a lamp, sweeps the house, and searches diligently until she finds it. Again, we see the great lengths God goes to find us. We cannot save ourselves, but God searches tirelessly for us. And again, when we're found, there is great rejoicing. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels over one sinner who repents. I wonder what sets us rejoicing. I remember quite a few years ago now we had a youth service and I spoke on this passage, and I began by announcing that there was a £5 note stuck under one of the chairs. There isn't today, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. I tell you, I've never seen a group of young people move so fast. And Phoebe, who found it, still remembers it to this day. I can tell you there was great celebration that day. But what makes us rejoice? England's women football team winning the Euros, or the men's team doing well in the World Cup. I mean, dream on. But or a family wedding. But heaven is full of joy over one sinner who repents. And that should be our attitude also. God has taken the initiative to seek out and save lost sinners when we were helpless to save ourselves. As one of our songs says, "You did not wait for me to draw near to you, but you clothed yourself in frail humanity. You did not wait for me to cry out to you, but you let me hear your voice calling me. And I'm forever grateful to you. I'm forever grateful for the cross. I'm forever grateful that you came to seek and save the lost." Is that the song of your heart? Because if the Lord Jesus has come and found you, it should be. If God cares so much for the lost, for those who do not know him, how much more, shouldn't we also have that same attitude? Should we care any less? Shouldn't we be praying, giving, and reaching out to lost people? We need to recognise the love of God for each lost soul. It's not a very good image, really, just giving out a tract, but the message on the tract is there is hope. We need to love people, to befriend them and reach out to them, rejoicing when they turn to Christ and find God's love for themselves. May we never be like the Pharisees, a holy huddle existing just for our own religious comfort. It's been so good in the last few weeks to see signs that we're getting back to pre-pandemic levels. Our attendance has been improving. We're going back to weekly babes and tots, weekly youth meetings. But one of the signs of renewed life, which is most encouraging, is a renewed concern for people outside the church. So we've had people offering to help with the catering for our Alpha course, people offering to help with putting on a quiz for social outreach, and people whose hearts are stirred to go out into the community, inviting people to Alpha, putting leaflets through doors or speaking to people face to face. That's such an encouragement. Maybe the Lord is speaking to you also to join them as they reach out to others with the love of Christ. It's not happening straight away. The leaflets and things have got to be sorted out, but maybe the Lord wants you to join them and to be going out into the community, or to be at church praying for them as they go out. Because God loves the people who walk past our church every day and do not know Jesus. May we never cease to reflect God's heart for the lost. And then, secondly, in the parable of the prodigal son, we see a merciful father and two kinds of sinners. Let's look first at the younger son. He's probably about 17 because he's not yet married, and he's bored, living at home with his dad. He wants a piece of the action. Dad, give me my share of the estate. Dad, I can't be bothered waiting around until you kick the bucket. I want the money now. Charming. He might as well have said, Dad, I wish you were dead. So his dad, very sadly, gives him his share of the money. And what does the son do? He sets off for a distant country, taking everything with him. He has no intention of ever coming back. So he heads for the bright lights and squanders his wealth in wild living. When no one knows him, he can live how he likes. No need to answer anyone. So he lives like a first century rock star. Wine, women, and fast camels. Parties every night. No doubt he was Mr. Celebrity, flavour of the month. But what happened when his money ran out? Suddenly, his new friends were nowhere to be seen. Sorry, mate, gotta go. Pretty soon, he hits rock bottom. He gets a job on a Gentile farm looking after pigs. For a Jew, this was about as low as he could go. But things were about to get even lower. He was so hungry that he longed to eat the same food as the pigs, but no one gave him anything. Things are pretty bad. And that's a picture of us in our sinful humanity. So often we don't like doing things God's way. All that God talk is a bit boring. We want to get out there and live it up, have a bit of fun. We want to live our lives our own way. There are so many things which look more exciting than living God's way. But so often, the glamour of these things turns out to be a lie. When we go our own way and leave God out of the picture, we end up in a mess. That which looks so exciting can end up bringing misery. Our society tries to tell the story that sin has no consequences, but that's a big fat lie. Do not be deceived, says Paul. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. The sin which looks so enticing leads to ruin in this life or the next. The prodigal son has hit rock bottom, and yet he's not beyond saving. That's the one good thing about the mess he gets in. It brings him to his senses. He realises that his father's servants are better off than he is. And he realises it's time to stop running. Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. I think it's worth noticing that this is genuine repentance. He expresses sorrow not just for what he has lost, but for what he has done. And he recognises that his sin was first against heaven and against the Father. So many confessions of people who are caught out express regret for the consequences of sin rather than sin itself. I'm sorry you got hurt. I'm sorry that I've caused so much trouble. But the prodigal son says, I'm sorry that I've sinned. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. And he doesn't make excuses. He knows he's not worthy of his father's love. His father owes him nothing. All he can do is throw himself on his father's mercy. But he goes. I guess he must have wondered what reception he'd get. After all, he'd shut his father out of his life, squandered all his money on good time girls, and ended up in the slurry pit, one of life's dregs. It would serve him right if the father kicked him out. You dare come back after all that? What a cheek! Get lost, you're no son of mine. God would have a perfect right to say that to all of us. But what happens? While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms round him and kissed him. It seems his father had been looking out for his son all the time. And when he saw him coming back, he ran to him. And you know, we're told that a Middle Eastern father would never humble himself to run and greet a wayward son. But this father does. Do you see the love that the father had for his child? And that's what happens whenever anyone turns to God. He welcomes them with open arms. Indeed, the rest of the Bible tells us that the cost of that welcome is the open arms of Jesus, spread out on the cross, so that we may be forgiven all the wrong things in our lives, all our rebellion against God. The love of Christ at the cross. That's how much God loves us. That's how much he's given in order to deal with our sin. So if you're not a Christian today, I want to tell you that there is a God who loves you, who is looking out for you, longing for you to come to your senses and turn to him. And when you do so, he's ready to forgive, to give you a new start, new life in relationship with him. Don't waste your life living far away from God when you can have the best with him in your life. When you come humbly to God, trusting in him, he will never turn you away. And then let the partying begin. There was rejoicing in heaven when I put my trust in Jesus. And the same for every other Christian here. And today God could be partying big time over you. So if you know that you've not been living God's way, are you ready to turn around and come to God through Jesus Christ? Don't miss out on the greatest party of all. But thirdly, I mentioned there's a different kind of sinner in this story. The elder brother is a respectable sinner, if you like. When he hears about the celebrations for his brother, he's angry and resentful. And I guess we can sympathise. He's been out working in the field faithfully. while the irresponsible brother has been off living a scandalous life. In fact, he can hardly bear to speak of his brother. This son of yours. So his father comes out and speaks kindly with him. He's the same gracious, seeking father that we've seen before. But the older brother refuses to go in. And here we see that he's a different kind of sinner. His sins are not the obvious public sins, but the hidden sins of the heart. The truth is that he resents his life of service. He sees it as a duty and not a delight. Maybe he even secretly envies his brother's sins. He's self-righteous with little room for grace, mercy or forgiveness. He sees himself as superior to others, and yet at the same time, he doesn't understand what it means to be a son. He has the mentality of a slave, not a son. Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. In the end, he's like the self-righteous Pharisees and tax collectors who didn't want to see God's mercy extended to those around them. His father's grace is held out to him, but he turns out to be outside the Father's will, and he chooses to remain outside. The apparent insider is actually an outsider. The obedient son proves to be disobedient, outside his Father's will. Now, I don't know about you, but I've spoken to many middle-class, respectable sinners who see no need to repent. They feel that they're perfectly good enough, they've done enough to earn God's acceptance. But we all need to recognise our own sin and our need of God's grace. Jesus suffered on the cross for sinners like us. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We all need the grace which is found in Jesus. So don't be like the eldest brother and the self-righteous Pharisees and miss out on the greatest party of all. Don't let your pride stop you coming to Jesus and entering into the joy of forgiveness and eternal life. Don't be too proud to reach out and accept the hand of grace which in Jesus God reaches out to you. And for those of us who profess his name, may we have the same attitude as our God. May we be ready to reach out to the lost around us with God's compassion. It may be in different ways. Some of us are able to directly evangelise. Some of us are able to show hospitality, to care, to invite people along to things. There may be different ways, but let's share the heart and the compassion which God has for those around us who do not know Jesus. That would be my prayer for us as a fellowship, that we would have that overflowing compassion to those around us.